Hey y'all! So today I'm going to be doing a series discussion on the Ascendance Trilogy by Jennifer A. Nielsen. The first part of this video will be spoiler-free. I will talk about the premise of the first book, and I will kind of give my opinions on the series as a whole, as well as giving my individual ratings for each book. And then I will go into the spoilery section where I will do a spoiler-filled review of each and every book in the trilogy. So the Ascendance Trilogy is made up of The False Prince, Book 1, The Runaway King, Book 2, and The Shadow Throne, Book 3. The Ascendance Trilogy is a middle-grade fantasy trilogy centered around an orphan boy named Sage. At the beginning of this book, Sage is collected by a man named Connor along with 3 other orphan boys. The land that they live in is without an heir to the throne because the king's son went missing several years before, and is assumed to be dead. Connor is a nobleman and has devised a scheme to have an orphan boy impersonate the missing prince. And he has recruited these 4 orphan boys to compete to become the false prince. Sage soon realizes that this endeavor is more dangerous than he initially realized, and that if he does not become the prince, he will surely be killed. This trilogy is absolutely amazing. I heard wonderful things about it from a handful of booktubers, specifically Jeff from Ermengarde Books, who said that this first book had the most amazing twist that he had ever read in a book. This trilogy is really fast-paced and action-packed and super exciting. For me, the best part of this trilogy is the main character, Sage. He's just so awesome. Like, I am willing to say right now that Sage is the best main character that I've read in any book ever. I just love Sage. Sage is incredibly cunning and snarky and sarcastic, and he does what he wants to, and he's super independent, and I love him. He's so cool. I also really love a lot of the other characters in this trilogy. At the beginning of the trilogy, it's kind of iffy for how you feel about several of the characters, but there are a lot that you grow to just love as the trilogy continues. Now, a lot of times trilogies aren't really my thing because they start out great and go downhill, or they just kind of are meh the entire time. This one, however, was not that at all. Most series tend to have like a shift in the tone and the mood between the second and third books. However, I think that the biggest shift in focus was between the first and the second books, and I think that that was actually a shift in focus for the better. As much as I really loved the trilogy, there was one thing that tended to happen that nagged me a bit throughout the series. Sage always has some sort of plan to get himself out of whatever negative situation he's in, and sometimes those plans are a little far-fetched. Sometimes when he managed to get himself out of a situation, I was really excited and I was like, go Sage, you're awesome. However, there were a couple times where I had to struggle to suspend my disbelief. So as much as I loved how cunning and clever Sage was, there were a couple times when I thought that maybe he was a little bit too clever for his own good, and that it wasn't super believable. Other than that, however, I don't really have any complaints about this trilogy. It was just really awesome. So really quickly, I'm just going to go through and tell you the ratings that I gave each book. I gave The False Prince 8.5 stars out of 10. It was my least favorite in the trilogy, but it was still really fast-paced and fun. I gave The Runaway King 9.5 stars out of 10. This was definitely my favorite in the series. I thought that it was really exciting and action-packed and fast-paced, and I just loved the way that the plot went in this book. And I gave The Shadow Throne 9 stars out of 10. This one wasn't quite as good as the one before it, but it was still a really epic conclusion to the trilogy, and again, fast-paced and exciting. So now I'm going to go ahead and jump into the spoilery section of this video. I will do each book individually in order, so if you have read 1 or 2 books in the trilogy, you can continue to watch until the end of that book's discussion. However, if you've not read any of the books in the trilogy, you should stop watching because I'm about to start spoiling the first book. So, The False Prince. I went into this book being told that there was this awesome twist and that I'd never see it coming, and I guessed the twist before I started the book. When I heard the premise of the book and I heard that there was this big twist, I thought, I bet the king's son is actually the main character and he went into hiding, or he went away for some reason and he is pretending to be an orphan boy. And the entire book, I was sitting there and I was like, please prove me wrong. Please let there be another twist. Maybe like Roden be like the missing king's son, or like Tobias. But unfortunately, I was proven right. I guessed correctly. I'm really good at guessing twists. Like, I think it's maybe because I've read so many books that it's really easy to guess, or maybe it was just a little bit predictable. I don't know. However, I still did really enjoy this book, even though I knew the twist that was coming, because I think that the last like quarter of the book was really exciting and fast-paced and cool. The first like 3/4 of this book weren't super fast-paced like the rest of the trilogy was. However, it was still really interesting to me because I do tend to like slower parts of the book more than most people, because I think it's really interesting to like learn about the world or to get to know the character a little bit better. So I did still really enjoy that. However, because I was disappointed by the twist and only the last like quarter of the book was super exciting, I ended up giving it 8.5 stars because I did really enjoy it and I thought it was great, but it wasn't quite as good as the other two. I'm about to talk about spoilers for The Runaway King, so if you have not yet read this book, go read it, because this is the best one in the trilogy in my opinion. Okay, so The Runaway King. This entire book is just so epic. Like, within the first 5 pages, we've already had an assassination attempt on Jaren's life. Like, what even? And it's Roden coming to get him. Like, what? I was just so drawn to this book immediately, like in the first 10 pages, because that was so exciting. And it just got better from there. I wasn't expecting to really love the pirate parts as much as I did, but I loved the pirate parts. I loved seeing Jaren pretending to be Sage again to get in with these pirates, and I loved all of the tricky things that he did in here, and it was just so great. I just absolutely love this book. I could not put it down, and I read the entire thing in one day because it was just so awesome and I wanted to see what was going to happen. Also, I went into this trilogy thinking that I was going to be really surprised by the first book, but I think this one was the one with the most twists and turns that I didn't see coming. I really appreciated that about this one. So like I said, I gave this one 9.5 stars out of 10 because it was my favorite book in the trilogy. Okay, I'm about to talk about spoilers for the last book, The Shadow Throne, so if you've not yet read this, leave. Read it. It's amazing. Okay, so The Shadow Throne. I actually read this entire thing yesterday, and so it's pretty fresh in my mind. I got really annoyed when Imogen was killed because, I mean, that wasn't cool. She was an awesome character, but I did still think that she was probably alive because honestly, in any book, unless the main character feels the pulse, like has them die in their arms, etc., unless we see that body dead, I don't believe it's dead. And that was the case here. I was like, Jennifer Nielsen, this is not cool. But at the same time, I was like, I'm not really sure she's dead. And then, of course, near the end of the book, she pops up and she's alive, and I was like, okay. I wasn't surprised, but I'm glad you did that. I do appreciate that good thing happening. This one, I think, was the first time that I had the problem with having to suspend my disbelief. Because several of Jaren's plans left me sitting there being like, really? Like, that was too easy. You got away with that too easy. I feel like in the second book, I was sitting there like, okay, Jaren, how are you gonna get yourself out of this situation? And then he broke out of prison, scaled a cliff with a broken leg, and then challenged the Pirate King to a duel to become the new Pirate King, and won with a broken leg. And I was like, whoa, awesome, epic. And then we get to this book, and I'm like, okay, Jaren, how are you gonna get yourself out of this situation? What plan do you have this time? And then, like, it just seemed too easy. Like, every single plan that he had, even though he didn't tell anyone, and we didn't see it till the last second, it worked out perfectly fine. Like, I feel like at least one of his plans had to fail at some point. Like, almost none of his plans failed. And as clever and as cunning as he is, he's gotta fail sometime. Like, there's gotta be one or two that don't work out. But yet they all work out. I know I'm saying this very aggressively and complainy, but like, I still really did love this book. Like, I gave it 9 out of 10 stars. That means I really loved it. Like I said, there were just a couple times where I was like, really? I'm not sure that's realistic. So yeah, like I said, I gave this 9 out of 10 stars because other than that, I absolutely loved it. So overall, there were maybe 1 or 2 things that I had problems with in this trilogy, but this was just a really awesome trilogy. So yeah, that's about all I had for this discussion on the trilogy. Hopefully if you've made it this far in the video, you have actually read the trilogy and you're not just watching this before you read the trilogy. Please tell me you're not watching this before you read the trilogy. Please tell me you didn't watch my spoiler-filled reviews while not having read the trilogy yet. Anyway, let me know down in the comments what you thought of this trilogy. Did you love it as much as I did? Which one was your favorite book in the trilogy? As always, I will leave a link down in the description to my blog and to my Goodreads. Please add me as a friend on Goodreads. I would love to be friends with all of you. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!